Hello and welcome back to Field Study, an exploration into the wild food of the British Isles. So it is the dawning of a new year and we're going to start doing things a little bit differently here on the channel. Each week you can look forward to a video which lists 3 plants or fungi which are edible or useful that you can go out and forage for. Then I'm going to end each video with a recipe of something delicious you can make with those plants. So over the course of the year we're going to build up a comprehensive guide to the wild edible plants of the UK and also give you a sort of a virtual cookbook of stock recipes that you can have in your arsenal to bring out whenever you go out foraging. I'm very excited about it. I've been working on the recipes over the last couple of months and I'm really looking forward to bringing you that sort of content again. We're in the depths of winter, so we're going to be starting off with a few basic things that you can forage for pretty much all year round. And then as the season progresses, more and more things will come along, ending in, hopefully, fingers crossed, a fantastic mushroom season this year. We're due one down here on the island. So without any further ado, my name is Joseph the Forager, and this is Field Study. What a gorgeous way to start the new year. It is the first week of January 2025 and today I'm going to be showing you 3 plants that are good to forage for right now. And then I'm going to show you a slightly different take on a stinging nettle soup that is guaranteed to knock your socks off and warm you up on a cold January day like today. So last night down here on the Isle of Wight we had a pretty heavy frost. I mean, we are one of the warmest parts of the UK, but it got down to minus 2.5 degrees in my greenhouse, on my greenhouse thermometer. But even so, there is still plenty of stuff to forage for in the landscape. In fact, if you can forage at this time of year, then you can forage at any time of year. And I will keep on banging on about that. So if you learn your basics now, you won't know what to do with yourself in the summer when all of the exciting stuff starts coming through. So this here that we're first going to talk about is familiar to pretty much everyone, and it is the stinging nettle. And at this time of year, especially in mild winters like we're having now, you will find all of this fresh green growth and new nettle tops. They have a word for this sort of new growth in the middle of winter over in Sweden, which is vårvinter or vintervår. And sorry for my pronunciation, but the stinging nettle tops at this time of year are absolutely delicious. The plant is putting all of its energy into growing these new leaves so it can make the most of the very little sunlight that we have at the moment. And because they're growing so rapidly to reach towards the light, they are soft and delicate and they aren't as fibrous as they can be at other times of year. So this is one of my favourite times of year to pick stinging nettles. This is also the time of year that I like to start picking them by hand and handling the stinging nettle. I don't think at this time of year, and this is completely anecdotal, but I don't think the stings are as bad as they usually are. If you start picking the stinging nettle now and just put up with a few stings on the soft and fleshier parts of your hand, then I think that your system sort of gets used to the stings themselves and becomes better at dealing with them. I don't react very badly to stinging nettles because I handle them all the time. My body knows exactly what it is when a stinging nettle stings me. So if you've watched any of my videos before where I've been picking stinging nettles, which is rather a lot of them because I am absolutely in love with this plant and what this plant can do, you'll know that we eat stinging nettles as a species pretty much everywhere they grow around the planet. So that's in all of the temperate zones, all the way around the planet. If there's stinging nettles growing, you will find human beings eating them and making things out of them. They are a very useful plant. And it just so happens that they like to grow in disturbed soil. So a thing that we do as a species, one of the things that makes us a cornerstone species in sort of low population numbers, is we disturb the ground, which stimulates the seed bed and helps things like stinging nettles and all of these things that we find growing on the edges of pathways now, helps them to grow and spring into life. And because of that, there is always nettle patches near human habitation. You'll find them pretty much everywhere. And in fact, if you're out in true wilderness, if you find nettles growing in great abundance, and then if you notice them growing more and more and more, then you are probably getting nearer human habitation. A little bit of a tip for you there. But as far as nutrition goes, these little guys are pretty formidable. They contain lots of the vitamins that we need at this time of year. They can stimulate our digestive system because they contain a lot of dietary fibre, and they are one of the most dense plants for protein that we have growing in the wild and even in cultivation. So if you are on a low protein diet, if you're a vegan that eats lots of sort of, you know, supermarket vegan processed foods, the things that are angled towards you, stick some stinging nettles in your diet. They've also got an incredible density of iron in them as well, so it's good for all round health. And one of the things that I found out recently about dietary fibre and why it's so necessary for us is that our body breaks down dietary fibre into short chain fatty acids, which are sort of the building blocks of all sorts of incredible things in the body, including the blood-brain barrier, the thing that stops toxic stuff getting into your brain and causing inflammation. If you have a good blood-brain barrier and reduce the inflammation in your brain, it could help alleviate some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety, if that's what your depression and anxiety is caused by. So yes, our diet can have a physical impact on our brain and therefore our well-being as a human being. So go out and pick some stinging nettles. They are free. You don't have to go and buy lots of supplements. In fact, lots of the nutrients that are in these are in that sort of weird green smoothie powder that lots of people spend an extortionate amount of money on in health food shops and stuff like that. So yeah, stinging nettles and also seaweed, which we'll come onto a little bit later on in the year. Just go out and pick it. It's free. So if you stay tuned to the end of this video, I'm going to be showing you a recipe that I found for an Italian nettle soup, which is unlike any boring, green, creamy, potatoey nettle soup that you may have had before. So stay tuned for that, or skip to the end if you don't care about the other two plants. But let's carry on the walk and I'll show you two more plants that you can forage for this week. My village is famous for these sheer limestone cliffs, and on a cold January day like today, when you've got a north wind howling down, it is really nice to come and sit below the cliff in relative shelter. It's almost tropical. So here at the bottom of the cliff path is our next plant. Now this is a plant which is an invasive species, so it isn't actually meant to be here in the UK, and it is a bit of a bully, but luckily for us it is delicious. And it is this bright green patch beneath my feet. So this here is three-cornered leek, and it is a wild onion, and it grows absolutely everywhere, especially in the south of the UK at the moment. It was introduced to this country via people's gardens. If you buy this from the garden centre, which you still can, you read on the back of the label, it says do not allow to escape, or yeah, something like that. And you know, people aren't as diligent as they should be, and it's escaped into the wild, and it likes to spread because it is clump forming. But all we need to know is that this is an onion, a member of the allium family, and all onion species that grow in the UK, including the big alliums that you grow in your garden with the pom-pom flowers, are edible, and they are delicious, and they can be used in the same way that any other onion can be used. So being in January, we are not quite in the wild garlic season. There are a few places that I know where our native wild garlic is starting to come up, but I wouldn't pick from it until it is much more established. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a member of the onion family that pretty much persists right the way through the winter. And it is this three-cornered leek. It is actually illegal to uproot any plant in the wild here in the UK without prior landowner's permission. So being such an invasive species and such a prolific spreader, I don't think anyone would mind that I was pulling this up by the roots. And the roots are what we want to get at. And you'll see they look exactly like spring onions, and they taste almost exactly the same as well, which is a good thing from a culinary point of view. You don't need to do much to these in order to use them any differently. So these are really easy to identify. You'll find them growing in clumps with these beautiful monocotyledon leaves. Monocots are plants that grow like grass, so they have a sort of singular blade-like leaf structure, and all alliums have that. All members of the onion family have that. So in order to differentiate between these and things like snowdrops and daffodils and all other sort of monocotyledon plants that come up at this time of year, we are looking for this ridge that goes down the back. So unsurprisingly, it is called three-cornered leek because it has three corners. So the flowering stems and also the leaves have got these three sort of blade-like ridges on them. But the most foolproof way to identify an onion is the smell. You are looking for something that smells intensely oniony. So as human beings, we are able to detect that sort of oniony smell really, really powerfully. Our nose is sort of attuned to it, and that is because onions are a good food plant for us. So if you give it a sniff and it smells like garlic and spring onions and all of them good things, then you know you are in the right ballpark. Like I say, this is an invasive plant, so it is okay in my opinion, not in the eyes of the law, but in my opinion, it is okay to remove it from habitats like this, where it will tend to take over roadsides. A little bit later on in the year, you'll find vast swathes of this plant, and it can be a little bit of a challenge finding things to do with it. If I find a patch that needs removing and I end up with lots and lots of these beautiful sort of bulbs, these bulbils that it grows from, what I will do is I will cut them off of the leafy green part. The leafy green part can be used in salads, stick it in a stew, lacto ferment it is very, very nice as sort of like a sort of oniony kimchi, and it goes all fizzy and tangy and lovely. But the bulbils themselves, if you blitz them up in a blender, you can freeze that and you can use it as a base for curries. So like you would with any other onion, you make a paste out of it and you can use that as the starting point for all sorts of curries. And it is delicious, and it's a really good way of getting nutritious onions into your diet. I really don't think if you have a dog and you go out on walks all the time, or if you are just someone that likes being outside, you should ever at this time of year be spending money in the shops for spring onions. These are sweeter than any spring onions that you will get, and they are delicious. Similar flavour profile, like I say. So if you're thinking about what to do with them, anything that you can do with spring onions, you can do with these. In my family, we cook a lot of Jamaican food, a lot of Caribbean food, and these can be used exactly the same as scallions are used in lots of Jamaican cooking. So yeah, really useful plant to know about. I also put this plant in when I make stocks, because when you've bought fine onions from the shop, or like big Spanish onions, super sweet things, sometimes it can be a bit of a waste to put it into a stock when there is something for free that tastes just as good. So if you're making a stock, whack a bunch of these in the pot instead of your onions next time, and you won't regret it. It's delicious. So I'm going to harvest this clump, and it's going to come home with me for use over the next couple of days, and it's going to play a key role in the recipe that I'm going to show you. Stay tuned. Woo, the weather is wild this week. Everywhere else is under a lot of snow, but we only got it as rain. Anyway, for our third and final plant this week, I've come to this beautiful hollow way on the outskirts of the village. This beautiful succulent plant with its disc-shaped leaves is pennywort, Umbilicus rupestris, otherwise known as navelwort because it looks like a belly button. But it is a delicious edible plant, and you will find it growing on walls and on banks of roadsides and stuff like this in the south of England. And it is delicious and crunchy. And it is one of my favourite edible plants to put in a salad at this time of year. For more information on any of the plants that we have discussed today, please check out the description below. There is a complete resource list of books you can buy and other places that you can go in order to find information about foraging. The storm is really coming in now. Right, I'm going to go home and wait for this rain to pass, and then join me in the garden where I'm going to show you how to create one of my favourite nettle recipes. Stay tuned. Woo! Right, so we've made it back to this little makeshift kitchen that I've made in my garden. Do you like it? So I'm going to be showing you an excellent rustic Italian recipe, which is called Zuppa di Ortica, which means nettle soup, basically. So Ortica is like the Latin name of stinging nettles, which is Urtica dioica. So in Italian, it is Ortica. Zuppa di Ortica, nettle soup. Anyway, it's unlike any nettle soup you've probably tried here in the UK, which tends to be a sort of heavy, creamy, you know, pulpy, potatoey sort of mess, in my opinion. And we're going to need to add some oil to our pan. That's the end of that. So the first thing that you're going to need is the white end of the three-cornered leek that we picked. So this is the sort of thicker end of the onion, the sort of one that has more spice, more flavour to it. And we are going to use the green bits, but not until a little bit later. So if we just prepare them like you would any spring onion, so if you cut the rooty bits off, I'm just going to fling them over there and cut them like that. This green stuff is excellent, sort of spring onion, wild garlicky flavour, and we're going to use that a little bit later. These bits here, we just basically want to cut them into small, little manageable rounds like that. Just like you would if you were slicing garlic or onions, just break them down until they are relatively small. So then we add those into our pan and just get them frying. And next we add just a little bit of tomato puree. And it is already starting to smell incredible. In my opinion, you really need to go in with a high heat when cooking anything with tomato puree. Because, I don't know, if you scorch the tomato puree, it takes away a little bit of that sort of plasticky taste that can sometimes come with it. So what I like to do is fry it in with my onions before adding anything else. While that is cooking away nicely and the edge is being taken off of those three-cornered leeks and they're sort of going all soft and sweet and lovely, we're just going to process down our stinging nettles, which are the sort of main star of the show. So these, you basically just need to cut them up really, really roughly, but quite small. So it doesn't really matter if it looks pretty. This is a rustic Italian dish, as I said before. But yeah. So that is the sort of texture that we are looking for. So if you see at the bottom there, we have started to burn the sugars, and I absolutely love that flavour. So the onion is not burnt, it won't be bitter, but some of the sugars from the tomato paste have started to burn. And then you want to add some chopped tomatoes. I've invested in some posh ones for the video, but yeah, any will do really. So once you've added the tomatoes, the acid from them will deglaze the pan, and all of those burnt sugars that were on the bottom will sort of become part of the sauce and add to the richness. And they'll add just a little bit more depth to the flavour of the soup. And it is already smelling fantastic. Now at this point you can make a decision about what sort of texture you want. You could blitz this with a stick blender. You could add a little bit of stock, maybe a little bit of like chicken bone broth would be nice. And after it's come back to the boil, we add our chopped up stinging nettles. So once you bring that up to the boil, you just need to let it simmer for a couple of minutes. Remember, any amount of heat will get rid of the stings of the stinging nettle. So there is nothing in there which is going to sting your tongue. So don't worry about that. It is just nutritious, foraged goodness. And it's almost ready. Serve the soup generously over a handful of cooked pasta, or alternatively with some lovely crusty bread. To garnish and for a little bit of texture, sprinkle over some finely chopped three-cornered leek. Now doesn't that just look gorgeous? Oh, I cannot wait to dig into this, a nettle soup that is far from boring. That is amazing. Please try this yourself. Let me know how you got on in the comments below. The crunchy three-cornered leek on top is lovely. I'm going to need a moment with that in a second. Right, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, click the thumbs up and click subscribe for more foraging videos from this beautiful landscape. My name is Joseph, this is Field Study, and until next week, take care. Abby, you've got to try this. Oh my lord, it's good.